Welcome back, everyone, to the Film Room podcast. This is episode 9. I'm your host, Joe Baress, here with my co-host, Joby Fawcett. Joby, how we doing?
Joe, if I told you it's been a rough weekend, okay?
Yeah.
So it started, first, full disclosure, I did the right thing, Joe. I got a flu shot like I'm supposed to every year, okay?
Oh, boy.
They tell you there's no side effects, maybe a little swelling on your shoulder.
Oh, no.
But then, Joe, I feel fine Thursday. I don't know who turned the air conditioning on Thursday night, but it went from 55 degrees to 42 degrees in about 10 minutes at the Abington Heights High School Athletic Complex. I had frost on my mustache. It was just horrible. It took me 18 hours to get the chill out of my body. And now today I'm feeling a little under the weather. But all that being said, Joe, we had good football over the weekend. I just got done watching the Dallas Cowboys get demolished by Detroit, so we're all good.
Yeah, we're all good, right? The Packers won, so I'm happy. But, Joby, I'm sorry to hear that. But let's have a little bit of fun here. Joining us right now is the Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week, Zach Cwalinski from Valley View Football. Zach, how we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Hey, thanks so much for joining the podcast on very short notice. Let's go over Zach's stats on Friday. He had 160 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns on 16 carries. He was also 8 of 14 passing for 107 yards and 1 touchdown to help lead Valley View to a 35-25 victory over Delaware Valley in the game of the week. Zach, this is obviously a big win for your team. Beating Delaware Valley is always a good thing. You know, what does a win like this mean for your team?
Yeah, this is a huge win. It just motivates us for playoffs. It just, not to take these next 2 teams lightly, but it's a huge win. We haven't beaten them in a couple of years, and it's just going to motivate us.
Zach, I was at the game at John Hens' Veterans Memorial Stadium on Friday, and you and I spoke after the game, and I just saw a different kind of focus out of this Valley View team here in week number 8. And I think it's something that Coach Scott Wasilchak has been hoping to see out of this group for quite a while. Even though you have been winning games, there have been some tight games. But in this one, you just seemed like you were very determined, the whole group, to come out there and really put together a good game offensively and defensively and come up with a victory. Tell me about the mood of the team and the motivation you all had for that game.
Yeah, right after last week's game, we just came into the locker room Monday and we were just ready to go. We were laser focused. We knew we had a big game coming up. And you could even tell our practices were different. Everyone was just already riled up since we got there.
Yeah, absolutely, Zach. I covered your game against Scranton, and you guys, while you pulled out the win, you didn't seem satisfied. This seems like a team on a mission. What was the difference really in this game that you guys really brought it and seemed to put it together one of your best games of the season?
Well, to begin, the flags, we're known as getting flags, and we just got to stop. I feel like every week we're getting a little bit better with them, but we got to stop with that. And then just opening up the playbook a little more. It just keep teams off balance. You don't always know what's coming at them. And to have that is just an advantage.
Zach, for you mentioned the opening up the playbook. Okay. And yes, you are a physical football player, and you have been a big part of this outstanding running attack that Valley View has established over the course of the last 7 weeks since week 1. And you do have the ability to throw the football, and you have some guys who can make plays for you. Coach Scott Wasilchak must have noticed early on in this game that DV was loading the box, and you really threw the ball nicely. The receivers made plays. Tell me about this passing game, how it's evolved over the course of the year.
Yeah, no, we came into the summer workouts, and we knew we were going to have to pass the ball a little more just because we're known for just running the football. And obviously we weren't as powerful as we were last year on the offensive line. So we knew we had to switch it up a little bit. And then, just staying after practice, throwing with your wide receivers, getting every detail down. makes our chemistry better and just it boosts everyone's confidence.
Yeah, speaking of chemistry, I think one neat facet about your team is that you have yourself, you have Preston Reed, you have Nick Gaharski, it's kind of like whoever's turn it is, you take the ball, you go. Talk about how great it is being on a team with, where there's no selfishness of, who gets the ball and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Even just have the luxury of the backfield. Like any one of our guys can make plays at any time. It's just bound to happen. And then, yeah, no, we just have athletes all over the place there, but that's really it.
Zach, listen, in this game against Delaware Valley, it was a little bit of a back and forth battle until in the early part of the game, and then you took the big lead. So tell me about, having that big lead and then seeing Delaware Valley, as it has so many times this year, come all the way back. You as the quarterback get into the huddle. It's 28-25, and you guys put together a heck of a drive, convert a fourth down in the series, and eventually Preston Reed scores a touchdown. But tell me about what you told the guys in the huddle right at that moment that Delaware Valley had closed within 3.
Yeah, right after their touchdown came into the huddle, I was just motivating the group. Like, I was like, yo, guys, we have to put together this drive. It'll win us the game. And that's what we ultimately did at the end. Just like after every play, clapping, getting them fired up. And that's it. Just keeping your guys on fire and ready to go.
Yeah, definitely. Moving ahead, obviously you guys are focused on, hopefully getting a district title this year. I mean, what's the mindset now? How do you kind of prepare for the postseason with 2 regular season games left?
Yeah. Our goal from the start is obviously to get that gold medal, which obviously everyone wants to do, but these last 2 games, we obviously can't take them lightly. And we're just going to use them for more motivation for the playoffs, and hopefully we'll keep the playbook going and just keep everyone off balance and really sharpening that knife with the pass game too, just so everything's on board for playoffs.
Zach Cwalinski, Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week, joining us here on the Film Room podcast. Zach, so I'm going to just have a little bit of fun with you here because you and I have talked about it before, but I played against your dad back in the old days in high school. Now, your dad's an old West Scranton invader, and he was at least in my top 5 in terms of the toughest players I had ever played against. He was a rugged defensive lineman and a heck of an offensive lineman. He was the 1-2 combination with Mark Spindler on the front line for a couple of great West Scranton teams. How often does he tell you about how tough those guys were back in the old Big 11?
Oh no, yeah. He tells me funny jokes all the time with them. Yeah. They had a crazy group back then, and some of the guys like he played with, I see them now, and it's always a good time with them,
Does everybody kind of tell you great stories about how tough he was?
Yeah.
Zach, listen, there are very few guys who I remember who physically abused me in high school. He was one of them. I mean, he was just a physical, tenacious, a heck of a football player.
Yeah. No, he helps me out though. Like, he motivates me every day.
Absolutely. Zach, I'm gonna have a little fun with you as well. I'm having trouble pronouncing people's last name on this podcast, and there have been pretty much for at least more than half the season, I've been calling you Zach Cwalinski, and I'm just curious, how badly do people butcher your last name, or am I just an idiot?
No, sometimes it's even worse than that, but yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
So it is Cwalinski, right? I got it from me?
Yeah.
Excellent. That's good. That's good.
Zach, listen, before we let you go, let's talk about the tradition of Valley View football, okay? Every time you go into the stadium there, you see the big banner with all the championships. And as you mentioned earlier, the goal here is to win a District 2 championship at Valley View this year because you finished second in your sophomore year, you finished second in your junior year. But how big and how much preaching do you get from the fans and the coaching staff about the tradition of Valley View football?
Yeah, no, the community, it's nuts playing for Valley. The community's crazy. something goes wrong, like they're on you like that. But those pictures in the wall, like our coach just instills it in us every day that like we have to be the next ones up there, the next one with the banner in the school like that, and that's what we want.
Hey, Zach, after, when we started, before we started the podcast, I asked you, you're apparently a Denver Broncos fan.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the team? How do you feel about Bo Nix and how do you feel about the team? Maybe today is not the day to ask you, but how do you feel about the team?
No, yeah, Bo Nix. I mean, he's slowly coming together. He's a playmaker, so nothing wrong with that as a Broncos fan. But we just beat the Raiders, and I can't stand them. All my friends, even my dad's a Raiders fan. I just can't stand them. But,
That must make for some interesting Sunday conversations, Zach.
yeah.
Well, that's great. That's great. All right. I think that's all I got. Joby, you got anything else for Zach?
Zach, I just want to tell you, I thought you played a really outstanding football game. I thought one of the things, just from a sideline perspective, is you were really a leader out there on Friday, and that's what Valley View needed against a very talented and a team with a lot of momentum in Delaware Valley. So I want to wish you a lot of luck as you continue forward. Hopefully we'll get a chance to see you again, and certainly deserving of the Athlete of the Week award this week.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Zach.
Thank you. See you.
All right, that was Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week, Zach Cwalinski. Big game, Joby. You were at that one. I know we just touched on it, but to me, that is a nice win and really a continuation for a Valley View team that has been just grinding out victories here ever since that week 1 loss to Prep.
Okay, Joe. So we had Valley View ranked number 2 in the preseason.
Right.
And then, of course, we had that big 1 versus 2 battle in week 1 between Scranton Prep and Valley View, and Scranton Prep won that game 33-0. Okay. Look, Valley View could have just bagged the rest of the season after that emotional loss, or, could have, tried to find its identity over the course of 7 weeks. And Coach Scott Wasilchak knew this Valley View had a very difficult schedule after that. The season didn't start and end with the Scranton Prep game. There were some really tough opponents lined up in succession there. And the whole goal of this coaching staff was to bring this team along, gain some confidence, establish a rhythm on offense, play good defense. And it's all kind of come together here. And I will tell you, having seen Valley View a couple of times now this year, that was an unbelievably well coached and executing of the game plan program that Valley View did on Friday night and came away with a win against the Delaware Valley team, Joe. Let's not forget 3 straight wins, okay, after the 0-4 start, but more importantly, a convincing win, I shouldn't say convincing, but a win over an outstanding team in Long Island Lutheran, which had 4 or 5 Division I prospects on it. So kudos to Valley View and the coaching staff there, which has been under a lot of kind of distractions that they've been putting up with this week. And listen, they played terrific. They know what's ahead of them. They know the goal, and they know that they have to keep improving, and they showed that in that game.
Absolutely. Just a few other stats from that game. Preston Reed, 67 yards rushing, a touchdown on 8 carries. Nick Gaharski, 80 yards rushing and 1 touchdown on 15 carries, 3 catches for 40 yards. Just reading your story, Joby, he picked up a key 4th down in the 4th quarter and intercepted a pass on Delaware Valley's final possession. Great stats, a great game by Valley View, and Delaware Valley's Mike Isolino. I got it, Joby, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Improving every day, every show. He had 176 yards rushing and a touchdown on 21 carries. As just to piggyback off what you were saying about Valley View, this is a team, again, I saw them against Scranton. They've grinded out a lot of wins this year, and those close games, obviously it's important to know how to win them, and Valley View is just proving that.
Yeah, Joe, and listen, before we get too far ahead of ourselves here, let's just mention, I spoke with Delaware Valley coach Keith Olsmer after the football game, and he was not pleased, not necessarily in its team's effort or its performance, but it's always difficult when you're trying to fight back from what was an 0-4 start to have a setback.
Yeah.
And Valley View, he took nothing, obviously great performance out of Valley View in the game, but I think he felt that Delaware Valley needed another win to keep kind of building some momentum moving forward. Delaware Valley did clinch a spot in the District 2 Class 5A playoffs. No surprise there. There's only 5 teams and 2 of them don't have any wins. Right. So, but more importantly, Delaware Valley, because of its strength of schedule, Joe, is maintaining a slight lead over Abington Heights for the number 1 seed. And that's coveted, Joe, because one, if you are fortunate enough to win that first round game in the semifinals, you will host the championship game. And I think above anything else, after the difficult season that Delaware Valley has gone through, particularly in the first month of the year, it would love to host a District 2 final if it has to play Abington Heights again. Because, look, Abington Heights is playing really well, especially at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you were saying, it's a passionate Valley View community. So absolutely you want that game at home. So Joby, let's move on to some other high school football here. I'm going to talk about my game, the game I covered. Scranton Prep beat Mid-Valley 28-0. This is the first time I saw Scranton Prep. Excellent. I mean, Lewis Baress, I know that you've seen it plenty of times, Joby, but this kid, when he gets ahead of steam, obviously he's got a wrestling background as well. You can't bring him down. And he was breaking tackles. I mean, he had 92 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, 11 carries. It was 10 of 16 passing for 155 yards. Really, most of his incompletions came at the end of the second half when they were trying to, get another score in before the end of the half, running a 2-minute drill. Will McPartland, 36 yards and a touchdown on 10 carries, 3 catches for 62 yards. But one thing that, obviously, those are your stars. But one thing that impressed me about Prep was their defense. Jack Doughton, Reese Tanner, Ambrose Rossi, Brady Holmes. Brady Holmes also put together a good game offensively, 3 catches, I believe 69 yards. But just you could see the preparation. They were, every time there was a pass thrown, they were meeting the receiver in the ball as the ball was getting there. And, making key tackles, it was just impressive because Scranton Prep went into a little bit of a lull, didn't score for about 25 minutes in that game. And the Scranton Prep defense, they shut down Mid-Valley. So, first time seeing them, this was, I guess the thing that I came away with most was seeing how good their defense is.
Okay. 2 points I want to make there, Joe, too, concerning Scranton Prep. Good performance, obviously, in a matchup against a pretty good opponent, Mid-Valley, 28-0, especially since Mid-Valley's back to full strength with Jacob Lesher returning on the offensive side of the football. Anybody who knows Terry Gallagher's background, he's the head coach at Scranton Prep, of course. He was an all-region linebacker. Okay, this kid played when he was in high school. He was just a tenacious defensive football player. He was a ball hawk. He just had a nose for the ball. And he delivered punishing hits, okay? And this was back in an era of high school football in the Lackawanna Football Conference, the Northeast Pennsylvania Football Conference, whatever it was back then, where it was run-oriented, okay? And that was the priority, was trying to stop the run. And Terry was a very good football player. He started as Scranton Prep head coach Nick Donato's defensive assistant, okay? And he takes tremendous pride in that defense, not only knowing where they're supposed to be on every play, but if you're out of position, he doesn't even mind as long as you're making an aggressive play. And that's all he preaches to his players, is playing 100 miles an hour within the framework of the defense and making sure that if a play is a positive for the offense, that the offensive players pay for the play. Okay. They establish momentum, they establish their superiority, and they play with a chip on their shoulders defensively. And you shut out a team like Mid-Valley, that's very impressive on your resume this year. And I think Scranton Prep is gearing up toward a really, really, really positive run to the postseason.
For sure. And what you just described, Joby, is exactly what I saw every time someone, caught a pass to be a punishing hit. Any run, there was just a punishing hit at the end of it. And also, Joby, I also want to bring up Jacob Lesher because he, like you said, 2 games. He had to sit 2 games because of an injury. He returns against obviously a very good Scranton prep team and does a pretty nice job. The numbers aren't as flashy as we've seen them, obviously, but
well, no, you're playing Scranton prep, Joe.
Exactly. But watching that game and actually being there, you could see just how good he is. Even by he had 70 yards on the ground on 18 carries, 3 catches for 40 yards. He was making an impact on the defense. It was really, really impressive, honestly, even in a 28-0 loss, to see him out there coming off of an injury and still making an impact. So I obviously we're all very happy to see him back on the field.
Yeah, and Joe, going back to your initial point about Lewis Baress, boy, we've got a real abundance of talent at the quarterback position this year in the Lackawanna Football Conference. These kids can throw it, they can run it, and it's you're going to make my life extremely difficult come the end of the year here, but Nick Bradley from Abington Heights clearly had a huge game on Thursday night. If you remember back when Abington played the first game of this weekend, right, 41-0 over Wallenpaupack, he accounted for 5 total touchdowns. He's just having a tremendous year throwing the football. You've got Lewis Baress, of course, a dual threat quarterback who really makes that whole offense go for Scranton prep. You've got Chase Tedonio at Riverside setting all kinds of career passing records for an undefeated team right now. And, these kids in this era of football, Joe, you see it every Saturday afternoon as you're watching college football for 18 hours straight. The dual threat quarterback is very important to the offensive's game plans in this generation of football. And we've got a couple of real outstanding ones. And of course, our athlete of the week, Zach Cwalinski, he does it as well, running and throwing now. He showed that against Delaware Valley. Logan Olsemer from Delaware Valley is a quality throwing quarterback who can also hurt you with his legs. So that's what we're seeing. Joe, it's a crowded quarterback room when you're looking for the top all-around player at that position this year in the Lackawanna Football Conference.
Well, certainly, Joby. And let's go there next. To give you Nick Bradley's stats from Thursday, you're right, it does feel like ages ago. He had 30 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns on 5 carries, 17 of 25 passing for 216, 2 touchdowns. He did have an interception. Shane Brower had 114 yards receiving on 8 catches. Sean Theodore, 56 yards receiving and a touchdown on 5 catches. Gavin Anders, 46 yards receiving, a touchdown on 4 catches. Abington Heights beat Wallenpaupack 41-0 in that Thursday night game. Joby, you were there. You were freezing. What'd you see on that one?
So, yeah, and here's the thing. Anybody could look at his offensive statistics and say, oh, that's Nick Bradley. He does that all the time. But, yeah, here's the thing, Joe, with the weather. If we had been in November, okay, and you're kind of getting that steady decline in temperatures and your body has already adjusted to the coldness, but it was 65 degrees on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay, Wednesday it was in the 50s or whatever. And for the most part, all day on Thursday, it was in the mid to upper 50s. And the temperatures just plummeted. Yeah. And anybody who walked out of that stadium still able to feel their fingers or toes were certainly in better shape than I was. But that being said, they were still flinging the ball at Abington Heights. And Shane Brower, here's a kid who's just overcome a lot of adversity in his athletic career. He's battled some injuries. He was sick for the second half of the game against Scranton Prep and was unable to go in the third and fourth quarters of that loss. And, he's just a terrific playmaking wide receiver. And Nick Bradley's got excellent weapons in him and in Sean Theodore, the former quarterback, and Gavin Anders in the slot making some big plays. So, look, Abington Heights is going to be a contender, and they're certainly looking to get a rematch with Delaware Valley. A lot of work to do yet in the weeks in between. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, Joe, but of course, you always do at this time of the year as you start to say who's qualified for the playoffs. We know Abington Heights is in. We know Delaware Valley is in Class 5A. Who the other 2 teams are remains to be seen. But Nick Bradley, the offense at Abington Heights, really, really starting to get into gear.
Definitely. And Joby, you did the triple crown.
Joe, that's 2 weeks in a row, by the way.
Yes, exactly. And you wrote it in time so we could get it right in the paper, Joby. Just
Yep.
love it.
People don't realize the constraints we are under these days, but we try.
No, we try. Exactly. Trust me. It's tough. But speaking of that Saturday game, Old Forge beating Holy Cross, my alma mater, 49-16. Chris Rasmus set a school record for receptions with 10. He had 93 yards receiving, added 46 yards on 2 carries. Kel Krasnowski had 133 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns on 11 carries. No kickoff return for a touchdown though, Joby?
Okay, Joe, so here's what we got for you. It was a very strange atmosphere at Old Forge Veterans Memorial Stadium for a Saturday afternoon tilt.
Yep.
I know, of course, Old Forge normally plays on Friday night, but a lot of teams volunteered to adjust their games to account for the shortage of officials in the area. And it really worked out nicely for Old Forge. It was their senior day for the football players and their other fall sports teams. And they had a nice crowd on hand for the Old Forge. And Chris Rasmus, as you mentioned, terrific day, 10 receptions, 93 yards. He also contributed running the football. TJ DiMattei, another terrific game throwing the football for him. And yes, Cal Krasnowski, 133 yards rushing. It was funny because during the course of the game, assistant coach Shane Schuback yelled over to me, "Does he have 100 yards yet?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Wow, I think that's his first 100-yard game of the year." And it struck me at that point. And yeah, it was probably his first 100-yard rushing game because he does so many other things offensively. You kind of think that he's not just a running back. He's a receiver. He's a kick returner. And no, Joe, he did not return a kickoff for a touchdown. However, it was late in the first half. Holy Cross had just scored to eliminate the running clock. It was 42-8.
Yeah.
Okay. And for some reason, Holy Cross decided to kick the ball to Cal Krasnowski. And he took off toward the sideline. And I said, uh-oh. and then they kind of had him bottled up, and he made a cut across the field. And Joe, there was nothing but green grass in front of him. I thought, here he goes. He's gone. And one Holy Cross player, the last defender on the field in his way, just lunged out and tripped him up, and it ended up being a 45 or 50-yard kickoff return. I forget the distance, but he came within a shoelace
of course,
of returning a 6th kickoff for a touchdown. But he had a terrific game. And look, this was an important game for Old Forge because the Blue Devils had lost their last 3 games and certainly don't want to go into the Triborough rivalry game here in week 9 on a 4-game skid. And Holy Cross had been playing better and had a lot more to play for in this game in terms of playoff positioning than Old Forge did. And Old Forge just took it to Holy Cross. It was a very good, complete football game. The defense played well, had 3 interceptions in the game. And now that sets the stage, Joe, for the Triborough rivalry game between Riverside and Old Forge. Riverside coming off a very tough, challenging game against Carbondale area, which a lot of people have kind of approached me and said, were you surprised by that? I'm not, because I think Carbondale area plays pretty tough defense.
Yeah.
And I knew that, Coach Jeff Arthur would have the defense really ready and revved up to play against a high-octane offense at Riverside. So that was a tough game. But again, anytime you're looking ahead a little bit to that rivalry game, sometimes you tend to be off kilter a bit, and against a quality opponent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that could lead to a tight game. So we'll see how Riverside bounces back from that challenge. And Old Forge, let's see if we can carry the momentum of that game against Holy Cross into this one.
Absolutely. It should be a good one. I should mention, like you said, Riverside beats Carbondale area 17-8. Richie Kostoff had 4 catches for 34 yards. He set a Lackawanna Football Conference record for receptions by a tight end with 117 and receiving yards 1,479 yards, surpassing Lakeland's Lakota Dipree. But yeah, like you said, I was kind of surprised to see Carbondale kind of hang with that with that Riverside team, and it should make for a great matchup against Old Forge. Probably a crazy atmosphere.
It will be a great atmosphere, Joe. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to North Pocono picking up a nice win here over Scranton, 21-3. Brady Laveri had 95 yards rushing and a touchdown on 21 carries. Michael Stout had 89 yards rushing and a touchdown on 4 carries. Also had a touchdown catch. Defense came up big for North Pocono in this game, making, I believe, 2 or 3 defensive stands, holding obviously to 1 field goal. This was probably one of the biggest wins of the week, Joby.
Yeah, look, North Pocono needed a win.
Yeah.
North Pocono's been battling injuries all year, even from the preseason. Many people don't know that. We try to keep some of that stuff to ourselves, but key players have been missing quality time here for North Pocono, and kind of masked by the situation where North Pocono jetted out to that 3-0 record to start the season. And I think this team had high expectations for this year, even though it's a very young team. A lot of sophomores, a lot of juniors, just kind of kids gaining experience as they're going along. And anytime you get off to that good start, I think you kind of say, hey, listen, we're on the right track here. But North Pocono's had some challenging games, has played well at times. Disappointing loss, obviously, to Valley View, where it played extremely well. So, but if North Pocono wanted to stay in the playoff race, it could not afford a loss here against Scranton, because the end of its schedule is extremely challenging, finishing up with Delaware Valley and Scranton Prep. So this was a huge win for Coach Greg Dolan and his team. And clearly the kids responded in a big way. Still without Joe Brisky, number 1 tailback on the team. He's been out with an injury. But you mentioned the team responded. The team had a good offensive performance, but more importantly, played extremely well on the defensive side of the ball to keep Scranton out of the end zone. And, this is a Scranton team, Joe, that has 5 wins, don't forget. This is a team that was coming off a 31-point performance against a pretty good opponent in Wallenpaupack. So, hey, North Pocono has a lot to be happy about from last week. But again, the challenges only get harder for them moving forward. But that win certainly helped even the record at 4-4. And now they are back in that District 2 Class 4A playoff race. They're in 4th place right now, slightly ahead of Honesdale, but behind Crestwood and Dallas, and of course Valley View, which is sitting at number 1.
Absolutely, Joby. Another nice win came out of Lackawanna Trail. They beat Susquehanna 49-12. Isaac Ryan had 165 yards, 2 touchdowns on 10 carries, and Logan Edwards had 147 yards and a touchdown on 5 carries. This was just another quality win for a good team.
Joe, I would have to say this outcome, while the Lackawanna Trail winning didn't surprise me in terms, this is a quality program up there, but just the dominance that Lackawanna Trail had in a game against a team from Susquehanna that both you and I know is a good team. Don't be fooled by what people may tell you. This team has wins over Dunmore this year, has a win over Lakeland this year, has a win over Old Forge this year. They've got some really good offensive players in Western Unoni and William Marcy. Reich and Hobart is one of the better players defensively in the league. And what surprised me, I guess I am surprised by the one-sided outcome in this. I believe it was 49-6 until late in the game.
Yep.
And Lackawanna Trail did that without Demetrius Douglas playing a snap on the offensive side of the ball. That's the team's second leading rusher.
Right.
So, I think Lackawanna Trail is starting to understand. I think, Coach Steve Jervis and his staff have done a good job of breaking this season down into segments.
Yep.
And this was one of those games that Lackawanna Trail kind of said, okay, now we're into our final third of the season. We want to try to put it all together here. And, of course, coming off a terrific second half against Carbondale area where it was able to, post a 39-6 win with 21 second half points, that carried right over into this matchup against Susquehanna. And I think if you were to ask anybody, nobody would have told you that, or would have said that Lackawanna Trail would win this game so convincingly. But So it's nice to see what Lackawanna Trail is putting together. I was happy for Logan Edwards, the fullback, Joe, and I'll tell you why. I played in high school with a pretty outstanding running fullback, okay? But he was also the lead blocker for many of my yards. And you always like to see a fullback get his chance to kind of carry the ball and have a good day. And Logan Edwards did that against Susquehanna. So, good game by Lackawanna Trail for sure.
Absolutely. Joey, I'm going to fly through some others here. I have to mention our weekly watch of Josh Vinton, 324 yards and 4 touchdowns on 14 carries.
Joe, that number doesn't surprise me. It's the number of yards he covered on his touchdowns.
That's what I mean.
Well, anyway, he ran for 140 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Exactly. It's unbelievable, Joby. It's unbelievable.
Joe, if you're a high school football fan, you haven't had an opportunity to see Josh Vinton play.
Yeah.
I encourage you to get to a Western Wayne game. And look, they've got the big one this week against Mid-Valley in the Lackawanna Football Conference Division II. The 2 top backs in that division going to be on display, Josh Vinton and Jacob Lesher. But I've got to give you a funny story because we've talked so much about Josh Vinton. He's had such a terrific year. So each year, as you know, I have to put together the all-region team at the end of the year with input from you guys, from what you've seen in the games across the year. And I had kind of submitted my final draft to myself, of course. And I did not have Josh Vinton on my all-region team last year at running back. Somehow I had overlooked him. And thank goodness, I don't know what made me or forced me to go back and, do that final comb through. And I looked through the numbers and how did I not go? Listen, I'm a little fatigued at the end of the year, so give me a little bit of, but he is a returning all-region running back. And thank goodness I didn't snub him because clearly that would have just given fans further evidence I don't know what I'm talking about. And he's a terrific football player and he is an explosive running back. I knew that back when he was a sophomore. I even knew that as far back as when he was a freshman. Joe, I covered that game against Mid-Valley in the District 2 Class 3A playoff game where then Coach Randy Wolf went for 2 and the win with, I think 10 or 12 seconds left to go in the game and they failed to convert. But that was his first real breakout performance as a running back as a freshman. And he's lived up to what I thought were my expectations back then. I thought he was going to be dynamite, and he really is.
Absolutely. Moving on so Dunmore beat West Scranton 21-7. Jack McNeff, 8 of 12 passing for 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jacob Costanzo had 3 catches for 51 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's another, it's another nice win for Dunmore, getting on track at the right time.
Joe, everybody ready to put Dunmore to sleep after an 0-4 start to the season. And here we are now going into week 9, and Dunmore has 4 straight wins in the regular season, 3-0 in Division II of the Lackawanna Football Conference. And if all goes well, Dunmore's got a tough game coming up this week.
Yep.
Against Holmesdale, both teams 4-4 entering the game. But if Dunmore were to win and Western Wayne were to win, the Thursday night featured game in Week 10 between Western Wayne and Dunmore could be for the Division II title. I said it early in the year, Coach Kevin McHale and his staff, this is an extremely young football team. I think initially his projection was to start 4 sophomores on the offensive line. These kids have matured. They have developed. Clearly they have a lot of talent because they wouldn't be starting as sophomores if they didn't.
Right.
And now Dunmore has kind of found its identity. It's got a rhythm. It's got confidence. And now they're in position. They're going to be in the District 2 Class 2A playoffs. And now they've kind of set their sights on finishing this season strong and challenging either Western Wayne or Mid-Valley, whichever team it may be, for the Division 2 title. And that's a lot to be said for the staff there at Dunmore and the players responding to the coaching that they received from the staff.
Absolutely, Joby. And I believe last but not least, Holmesdale beat Nanticoke area 56-7. Mason Avery, 142 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns on 9 carries, added a 22-yard catch. Great game for Mason Avery. And Joby, So that wraps up week 8.
Mm-hmm.
What do we have to look forward to in week 9?
All right, Joe, before we get into week 9, because I touched on some of the stuff there, but let's also mention Wyatt Rutherford from Honesdale. He was our feature story in last week's Game Face. You know, it was funny because Coach Paul Russick, he's been there for a couple of years now, and this was the first Game Face cover that Honesdale has had in quite some time.
Oh, wow.
And they were extremely happy, and what a fine young man Wyatt Rutherford is. He's 6'4", he's 290 pounds, and he's so quiet. And I got a chance to talk to him. He and his teammates, but him in particular, have kind of fought through such heartbreak in their lives. And I just enjoyed being able to tell that story at what was a very challenging time for me this time a couple of years ago when my nephew Matt Pigeon was killed in an automobile accident, because fans often just look at the kids as players because they're in uniforms and whatever. But many of these young players, whatever sport it may be, could be any sport, they have such difficult times or, tragedy, adversity, whatever you want to call it, that they have to deal with in their personal lives that nobody really knows about. So I always get kind of choked up a little bit when I get an opportunity to talk about a young man who lost a brother who was killed in a tractor accident while he was working on a farm. And of course, anyone in Honesdale, you remember back a couple of years ago when they lost teammate Samson Fluck, who died tragically after a short illness right after they had just lost a playoff game to Valley View. And you just see the maturity that these young players having dealt with that. And I just admire them, and I admire the whole communities who have to go through that, and certainly the community at Honesdale. So I just wanted to mention that because the success, I was happy that Honesdale was able to get a win, but clearly it was emotional for them to have to play against Nanticoke, which has gone through its own form of tragedy this year by losing their head coach right before the season. So sometimes we all get caught up in the sport of it, and it's certainly a release and a way to kind of get away from the strain of real life. But there is real life out there, and many of these players and are dealing with a lot of things off the field that nobody really knows about. And I do enjoy having an opportunity to tell those stories. Just wanted to get that out there for you, Joe.
Absolutely. You said it all right there. So moving on to week 9, what do we have to look ahead to this week?
Well, Joe, we know right now the game of the week is going to be Mid-Valley at Western Wayne. Okay.
Yep.
That's an important game for Mid-Valley. I think Mid-Valley really wants to focus in on trying to get itself back on track now that Jacob Lesher's back in the backfield. But if Mid-Valley wants to win the championship, it's got to beat Western Wayne. I mean, that's just part of the deal here, because Western Wayne's in control of the division standings. We have some other big games as well, Joe. While the division games are important this time of the year, one game in particular stands out. Scranton Prep is going to be at Jersey Shore. This is the third of those 3 non-conference opponents that Scranton Prep scheduled on its own to kind of beef up its schedule. And Jersey Shore is 6-2 on the season. It's a perennial power out of District 4. It's a road game for Scranton Prep. I think that's going to be a real good gauge for the Cavaliers to see where it stands on the state stage, because Jersey Shore is one of the top Class 4A teams in the East, and Scranton Prep, of course, one of the top Class 3A teams in the East. So I think that's going to be a real good football game. And Joe, look, every game's important now because teams are scrambling, especially those teams that are just on the cusp or need to qualify for the playoffs. We're going to get a lot of teams in, okay, from the Lackawanna Football Conference. But the Class 4A is where all eyes will be focused on as we move forward, because that's where the real shuffling has to be between North Pocono, Honesdale, and Wallenpaupack. Those 3 teams out of Lackawanna Football Conference are going to be battling for that 4th and final spot in District 2 Class 4A moving forward. So those 3 teams will be teams that we really have to focus in on their successes or failures moving forward.
Absolutely. So we'll obviously have our game face this Friday. Be sure to pick up a copy of the paper 4-page spread. Joby works very hard on it. So,
Yeah, we put in a lot of hours here today just to kind of get stuff done. So
exactly. So, pick up. There's going to be more good stuff in it. A nice feature, game capsules, players to watch, everything you could want to prepare for the weekend's games. Joby, I think that wraps up high school football. Let's talk about, obviously you got a big day tomorrow, Joby.
I do.
So talk about that. We got District 2 singles tennis. What are we looking at tomorrow?
Well, Joe, we're coming off of Abington Heights and Scranton Prep both winning District 2 team championships, which comes as really no surprise to anybody who follows the sport of tennis.
Right.
Every year, those two programs, and then we slip Wyoming Seminary in every now and then in Class 2A. But that really, look, Scranton Prep's the defending PIAA Class 2A champion, returns its entire lineup, so the Classics are the favorite to win the District 2 championship, and did so quite impressively, I might add, last week. And Abington Heights won for the 7th straight year in Class 3A. So congratulations to them. But what we have on tap for you tomorrow, Joe, which is going to be a busy afternoon for me at Birchwood Tennis and Fitness. Very happy that tennis chairman Mike Ognoski moved it indoors in case the weather's a little nippy tomorrow. And considering my health and how much I dislike cold weather. Now, look, in Class 2A, Joe, I think we have 4 players that all warrant a bid to the state tennis singles championship tournament. Unfortunately, only one gets to go in District 2, but we've got top seeded Atlanta Rosenthal, who is the 2-time PIAA champion in Class 2A. She is going to be taking on the 4th seed from Scranton Prep, Alyssa Wigley, who is the 2-time Times-Tribune Player of the Year. In the other semifinal, you've got Scranton Prep's Lily Langel, who will be taking on unbeaten Kara Evans. So that's going to be a really impressive foursome right there. All 4 are ranked in the state for their respective classes. And then in 3A, I'm rattling this stuff off, Joe, but here's what we have. Number 1 seed and defending 2-time champion Susan Arp is taking on Wallenpaupack's Sarah Niemiec. She is the number 4 seed. And the 2 seed is Hannah Ziegler from Crestwood. She made the final last year against Susan Arp. That match was a 3-setter last year. And Ziegler will be taking on Sona Hanyamali from Abington Heights, who has had a terrific bounce back year. She actually entered the tournament as the 6th seed because she had an injury early in the year and had a couple of early season losses. But she has certainly turned things around. She won one of the key matches to clinch the team championship last week. She pulled off an upset in the tournament over Delaware Valley's Noelle Holderith. So that should be a good semifinal there, the potential to have 2 Abington Heights players in the final. But I'm looking forward to it, Joe. I always look forward to this time of the year with the girls' tennis. We really have outstanding tennis players here in Northeast Pennsylvania. These kids should really be proud of themselves, and the coaches should be as well.
Certainly, Joby. And last week you had a big volleyball match too. North Pocono beating previously undefeated in the Lackawanna League, Western Wayne. It was a battle of Lackawanna League unbeatens. North Pocono pulls that off 3-0. Just talk about that match and, what you saw out of that from obviously a very solid and a team that was favored to win the Lackawanna League in North Pocono.
Joe, I walked away and couldn't be more impressed with the teamwork from North Pocono. Western Wayne is a very good team. Okay. Lauren Beamer is a big hitter.
Yep.
She's got a very good swing. Reagan Palmer does a great job in setting her up. I just could not get over the terrific performance all around by North Pocono. We hear all the time about what an outstanding player Mia Suma is and Sawyer DeLucy. They are terrific. They are all region players. They should be all state players. But the other pieces from this team, just remarkable. Pia Zangardi, the way she plays defense, she makes it extremely difficult, for you to score because she's digging everything out. And when you're able to have the kind of, I think they had as a team 63 digs in that match.
Wow.
This is coming from a Western Wayne team that's putting the ball in position for winners.
Yeah.
And they just kept getting dug out. And then North Pocono would patiently run their sets. And that's a credit to Coach Alexandra Zero, just a terrific fundamental coach. And this is a very good team from North Pocono. I was very impressed with the teamwork. I was very impressed with the camaraderie, the pure joy that they play with. And I think that's a big thing that some of these, sometimes we're just always going to football games. We forget in these other sports, you kind of get some real neat settings for these teams. And North Pocono is a very good team. And again, Joe, coming away from the matchup, I still think Western Wayne is going to be one of those teams, certainly going to be a top 1 or 2 seed in District 2 Class 2A. Very talented team at Western Wayne as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Joby, just numbers that really stuck out to me this week for Sawyer DeLucci. 31 assists in that win over Western Wayne, 34 assists in a win over Mountain View, 26 assists in a win over Scranton. I guess what's so impressive is that like she's getting assists into the 30s, and these aren't even going like 5 sets.
Oh, she's impressive too.
Yeah.
So look, she's a veteran. She's a 4-year starter.
Right.
She just has an uncanny knack of, once the team gets the ball in play and gets the offense set, she does a nice job of getting herself in a good position, and she is just comfortable with, she knows the pressure she has to put on a ball to set it nicely for her setters, and they deliver. She's a terrific player.
Yeah.
She really is. And this team is a very good team.
Absolutely. I'm just going to run through some other things from other sports. Cross country, Anna Pusilowski set a course record at DV.
No surprise there, Joe.
No surprise, exactly. To help Abington Heights to 3 wins, including over unbeaten Wallenpaupack. Aiden Janowitz, Wallenpaupack boys cross country, also set a course record at DV, helping the Buckhorns to 3 wins to remain unbeaten. We also had some good performances in golf. Obviously, our Abington Heights and Scranton Prep teams advanced to states, winning their sub-regionals, kind of dominating their sub-regionals, honestly. Robbie Lucas, 3 over 74 to lead Abington Heights. These were at Fox Hill Country Club. Brandon Bell, 5 over 76. Gracie Dalton, Montrose girls soccer. She had 4 goals, including the 50th of her career, in a win over Carbondale area on Thursday. She also had 8 goals in a victory over West Scranton on Tuesday. Johnny Chillery, Riverside boys soccer, had an equalizer and the game winner in Riverside's 3-2 victory over Holy Cross. He had a hat trick against Forest City earlier in the week. Zach Evans, North Pocono boys soccer, had 6 goals in their 6-0 victory over Wilkes-Barre area. He had a goal and 3 assists in a victory over Valley View last Monday. I know we've mentioned, but Tommy Clark had another good week, scored 2 goals and had 2 assists to lead Dummer to a 4-0 victory over Gregory the Great, added 4 goals and an assist in a 7-1 victory over Western Wayne. Kylie Kozlowski, Mountain View girls soccer, had 5 goals in the second half alone to lead the Lady Eagles to a 6-3 victory over Western Wayne. She also had 2 goals and 5 assists in a victory over Hanover area last Monday. Elizabeth Meager, Honesdale girls soccer, had 2 goals in the Lady Hornets win over Tunkhannock on Saturday. 2 goals and an assist in the Lady Hornets' 5-0 victory over Elk Lake on Thursday. Had 4 goals in a 5-0 victory over Carbondale area on Tuesday. And so those were just some other great performances from last week. Joby, did I miss anything?
Oh, probably, Joe. We had a very busy week last week, but I think you did a pretty good job there.
Thank you. So
you're like, you know who you remind me of? Who's the guy from the old sportscaster who he just rattle off the scores and everything? He used to do it really, really fast. That was what you reminded me of right there.
It was funny, Joby. Like I was in the middle of that, and I was just like, am I going to keep going and just read all these? And it's just like, you know what? I put in the work on this Google sheet, and I'm going to read every single one of these performances.
I thought it was well done, Joe.
I appreciate it, Joby. I appreciate it. Hopefully our audience does as well. Well, Joby, I think that wraps it up for high school sports for the week. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it up here?
I just want to say this, Joe, before we go. I know we are short on time. I couldn't be happier for the thousands of Penn State fans that the Nittany Lions were able to squeeze out that victory over unranked USC. Very important win in the Big Ten. And Penn State now looking very good, Joe.
Number 3 in the country,
Number
Joby.
3 in the country, Joe.
Oh, my God.
We are
number 3.
There you go.
Drew Aller, Heisman.
Oregon doing everybody a lot of favors by beating Ohio State.
That's it. We're rolling. Hey, listen, if you need to blow a game, ask Lincoln Riley. He'll do it every time.
Joe, listen, you can't make this stuff up with Lincoln Riley. I've never seen a guy go into halftime with 3 timeouts in his pocket and just decide to let the clock run. All right. It's amazing. He did the same thing at the end of the game too. It's just, I don't know if he just gets caught up in the atmosphere or what's going on, but why end the game with 3 timeouts in your pocket? I have no idea.
Exactly.
I'm not pretending to be a college football coach, Joe, but holy cow.
Exactly. I mean, not to turn this into USC talk, but USC is not going to stand for that from him. I don't care who he is. I feel like they'll move on. They'll move on.
Sure they will.
I don't know, but
I don't know either. But listen, I listened to the broadcast, and you would swear that Lincoln Riley was Vince Lombardi the way they talked about him.
I know.
I don't know. We'll see, Joe.
We'll see. I don't know, but
Michigan's out too, so you can focus your attention somewhere else on a weekly basis.
How dare you, Joby? You're right.
Well, I'm just mentioning it.
You are right. I can't deny it. So.
Well, you've got to be thrilled, Joe, real quick in the last minute here. Green Bay had a real impressive performance against mighty Arizona this week.
Good win. Yeah, that was a good win, Joby. I was very happy this afternoon. The whole family here was very happy watching the Packers dominate. So
well, Joe, now you can go another week without washing your Jordan Love jersey.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The streak lives on.
That's right.
So, Joby, thank you so much for joining me this Sunday evening. Thank you to Zach Cwalinski for joining us on, getting back to us really quick, not only me, but to our colleague Sam Freeman, who did the Athlete of the Week interview with him. He knocked out both interviews in one day. So, Zach, we greatly appreciate it. You were fantastic. That Athlete of the Week interview he did with Sam Freeman will be in Tuesday's paper. Also, there's a lot of great content online from us and in print online, the Times-Tribune.com/sports. Follow along, follow Joby Fawcett, the Times-Tribune. There's plenty of bonus content you could get there on Facebook from him, videos, everything. So we're doing plenty of stuff here. So follow along.